All right, hello. I'm Paul from Changescape Web, and today I'm joined by Ian Cannell from Outsource Marketing and Ken from Changescape Web. And our other two guys are missing right now, but it's okay. Jeff has recorded his answers for us, and in this episode, I thought we'd take a little more of an in-depth talk about content marketing. We talked about content marketing in the past, and it's kind of been more of a high level overview. And I think there's a lot of things that marketing agencies, we do from a content perspective that a lot of times our clients aren't aware of and don't really understand why we do what we do. So I thought I'd dive into that a little bit. So, Ken, start with you. We've talked about user experience before, but how does that help from a how does how does it help create better content?
Well, it's really how does content help create a better user experience, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is just clarity of message. If you're not clear on what it is that you do, and you confuse a website visitor, look, they've got a lot of choices. They're just going to keep going down the list until they find somebody that gets them. So you don't want to give them that opportunity or reason to do that. Donald Miller talks about if you confuse, you lose. And he's got what he calls a simple, this is from StoryBrand, a simple grunt test. If you can't look at the website in 3 seconds or less and grunt what that web page or website is all about, you're probably not very clear. So we live in a world where attention spans are really small most of the time, and so you don't have the luxury of not being clear anymore. Massive mistake a lot of websites make. Second thing is, this comes from duct tape marketing. Does it really differentiate your business? And another test that John Janch from Duct Tape talks about is, if you had somebody read the copy of your website, excluding all of the branding and location information that might be giveaways that you would personally know, um, and they read the top of the homepage copy to you from three websites, you and two or three of your top competitors, would you be able to tell which one was yours? And that, those are two great tests, I think, to just use to try to put yourself in the user experience and get yourself out of the business. It's easy to fall into that trap. So, another thing that I think is really important from a content perspective is writing to the problems that you solve for your clients and using their language, not your jargonistic language. It's easy, again, to fall into a trap. If you're writing your own content, you're going to write it the way you think about it, but that may not be what your customers and ideal customers are thinking and looking for when they're finding a website, and then when they land on a website, if that language doesn't mean anything to you, or to the visitor, you're going to lose them. So I think those are, you know, three or four real key things to think about at the very beginning. Now, why content helps the user experience and why it's beneficial for a business, it gives them the information that they're looking for. Most people are going to land on your website either by search or they've been referred to your website. And so they're there for a specific reason. You want to make sure that the way the content that you have on your website really speaks to them and why they're there, why they're visiting your website. The better experience they have, the longer they're going to spend on your website. That's great for your business because that's a little signal to the search engines that, hey, this is a meaningful website. It's providing some type of a value structure. You also want to avoid pitfalls. A lot of people, think their website is almost like an online brochure, and sometimes that's okay. I mean, honestly, if you're 100% word of mouth or, BNI network marketing kinds of events, and that's all the business that gives you all the business that you can handle, and you don't want to grow beyond that, hey, having a brochure website's not the worst thing in the world as long as it's professional. But anything beyond that, you need to think differently than it's just a brochure or print media. A lot of people mistakenly want a website to be these gorgeous, beautiful, eye-catching, stunning websites, and they put all of their focus and energy on that. And the content, honestly, is, well, I can't say that word on air. And it just drives me nuts. And we lose when we lose building websites for businesses. It's because they get seduced by somebody who says that they can build them and shows them these beautiful websites that they've created without any regard to whether or not they're conversion optimized from a user experience perspective, from a content perspective, from an SEO perspective. I mean, you name it. They fall into that trap. And I'm telling you, don't do that. That's a huge mistake. You're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to get a website that loads like crap. It takes forever to load because they're focused on building beauty, not function or communication. And, and if think about it, if you go to a website and it takes seconds to load, several seconds to load, are you going to stick around? If you have an emergency situation, you're sure not. And in most cases, you're probably not. And Google recognizes that, and it may not even show your website to be seen by people if it's loading slow, because Google does not want to deliver a bad experience. So content is absolutely critical. And by content, that also does go into the imagery that's associated with it. Another huge mistake that people make is they feel like they need to upload 300 DPI pictures that are print quality pictures that could be resized as big as they possibly would need to be with the highest possible resolution. These are large file sizes, and they just make your website performance crawl. And look, I want beautiful images on a website that I create for our clients as well, right? I'm not saying that. You want to focus on having the right images and telling, the right story visually that resonates with the written copy that's on your website. But you need to take the care and attention to make sure that those images are right sized. First of all, are they going to look good across the variety of devices? Even if it's mobile responsive, the focal point of that image may be jacked up if you look at it in one resolution versus another. So you need to pay attention to that. But they also just need to be small, lightweight files, because you don't need these print quality images on your website. That's just a killer in terms of performance.
And Ken, if I can jump in, I just want to clarify with our viewers, listeners, like what you're saying is you can't have it. It's not that you can't have a beautiful website that's designed very nicely,
Right.
because oftentimes, like if you're selling or providing a service that's a high quality service, especially in luxury brands, that kind of stuff, like you want it to convey the quality of the service you're going to be delivering. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I know you well enough that
Yeah.
don't want a misperception to happen that you're saying, well, you just need a junky site with great content.
Yeah.
But everything, what you're saying is everything on your website, from imagery to text to video to, whatever it is, how it's laid out makes a difference. But there's always trade-offs, and you need to be very cognizant that if you go very high on the design side without worrying about the buyer's journey, SEO, you're going to pay the price. And that price is lower conversions, lower acquiring of new visitors, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. I'm not saying build ugly websites.
Yeah.
What I am saying is don't be seduced by focusing only on the beauty, because that is going to come back and bite you. We've seen it happen time and time again to clients.
Same here. Yeah.
And it's criminal. I mean, it's such a shame because people spend a lot of money and good money thinking that they're going to get something that's going to be really special, and visually it may be eye popping, it may be amazing, but the rest of it honestly sucks.
And my experience there too, Ken, and I think it sounds like it's the same as yours, is that rarely do they actually save any money by getting a bad converting website. Sometimes they even pay more because just what you said, they're allured by this, oh, it's going to look like the Apple website, or
Right,
something like
right.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
Um,
that could be like a tagline. You see the commercial, we buy ugly houses, we build ugly websites.
yeah. Well, there could be a market in that. I don't know. Um, the other thing that I think is really important is that a lot of people don't guide the user to take action, and it's not always obvious to people. I mean, just having simple things on your website. Again, I love StoryBrand and kind of the style of it because it tries to draw people into a story. It tries to get them to identify themselves as the hero who has the same type of a problem, and they see that you're the guy that can help them solve that problem. Okay, great. What do I do next? Okay, well, if you don't have your phone number visible, and a lot of businesses don't want to publish their phone number, and I get that prominently because they don't really want to answer the phone all the time. That's okay. I mean, I get it. I mean, my business doesn't really operate that way. I mean, I'm not driven by phone call like a restaurant or a dentist office or somebody like that as much, but I still want to have a call to action, and you want to give people a fast button to say, hey, I'm ready. I want to talk. And that's, schedule a consultation, make a reservation, book an appointment or a phone call if that's appropriate for your business. But realize that not everybody is ready to do that yet. But they may find massive value in your website, and they may be having a great experience consuming the content on your website, but they're not ready to take that action. You're missing an opportunity if you don't create what we call a transitional call to action, which is giving them the ability to say, hey, I'm curious, I want to learn more, but I'm not ready to talk. Download an ebook, watch a webinar, a checklist, take a little mini course. I mean, there are a lot of these different things. If you're not clear on your calls to action to help set the expectations of your users, you're not going to get very strong conversions either. And
can I just add something to that, Ken?
sure.
The one thing I see that's a real problem with calls to action is that the business focuses on what they want and not on what their ideal client wants. And if their ideal client wants to pick up the phone and talk to you, like, what the heck are you doing? Like,
Right.
put the phone number on there.
Exactly.
Because if that's how they are going to go through their buyer's journey, you should be paying attention to that. And I see sometimes businesses who they're so in their own head as far as like, these are our processes. We're not going to, we don't want to answer the phone. Well, then you're not going to land clients that want to talk to you on the phone, right? Like, it's as simple as that. It's not complex.
Right. And also, calls to actions, which are typically going to show up as buttons, on the website. Don't have a ton of different buttons. Keep it simple. Have two primary buttons is what I recommend generally, but they need to be meaningful. Learn more is not compelling,
And the statistics show that
yeah,
those are some of
exactly.
the least clicked on buttons. Yeah.
Yeah, so don't waste that valuable real estate. And I'm a big believer that, most businesses need to have their phone number prominently displayed in the top nav and also in the footer navigation on each and every page. Not every business. I mean, certain businesses, maybe that's not really the way they operate. An online store, for example, probably not going to have a phone number up there. But um, but yeah, it's such prime real estate, and don't clog it up. On your website, you want to make it super easy and simple, super clear how people, who have had the good user experience are ready to take that next step. So this, it's just super important I think a lot of people, they buy generic websites that, are rapidly assembled, maybe even templatedized, if that templated, whatever. Um, but that stuff's not baked into it. And you can have both. You can get a templated website that is smartly built if that is what your business needs. Um, but just don't be fooled by these things. I mean, there are a lot of factors, and content is honestly, it's the driver. It's the fuel, in my opinion, that helps power everything about your online presence.
Yeah, definitely. When you talked about the calls to action, it's so you go to a lot of websites, and going back to what you said, they look great, but there's no call to action.
Or there are 50.
Yeah. There's either none or there's 50, and you almost have to hunt. It's like, are you trying to make it difficult for people to get in
Yeah.
touch with you? I mean, you see that
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you do this, or do you work with these people? Or and look, if you interject doubt in somebody's mind, if you give somebody more than three choices, typically, you're delaying decision making by 50% or more. And the more that you give people choices, like if you had that fourth button or that fourth major service that you focus on, or that fifth or sixth, you're slowing down decision making potentially. Not always, but potentially. And I'm a big believer, anything more than seven, you're going to lose people for sure. So, I mean, human mind just seems to be optimally working between 3 and 7. And really 3 is the best number if you can achieve it, but it has to be meaningful, and people have to understand what to expect when they're consuming the content on your website. And, even if it's a blog post, a lot of people forget to have calls to action in their blog posts. I mean, you're helping somebody understand an issue that they have. Maybe the next logical thing is, by the way, if you want to learn a little bit more about this topic, download our ebook that covers, all of, the whole breadth of this topic. And maybe that's good enough, and then have a strategy to stay, in contact with them. But yeah, I mean, if you just try to slap content together to put together a website without a lot of thought and consideration behind it, you're probably going to be disappointed in the way it performs. Even if it looks great, it's not going to perform well.
I thought the question was a really good one that you posed, Paul, about how content helps create a better user experience, right? That, to me, it's such a simple answer, and yet people miss it, is that everything on your website is content. And the only reason why anything exists on your website is for the two audiences, and that's Google and the people you're trying to attract, right? And, I think you've gone into great detail, Ken, but I don't want people to miss how simple it is.
Right.
That it's not about you, it's about them, and
Right.
you helping them. They want a solution to their problem. That's why they're on your website. Make it easy for them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you'll win.
Yeah.
Yeah, and internal linking to help guide the user. I'm not going to go into that, but
The magical book.
The magical book.
But so something Ken said about if you have multiple sources kind of dovetails into what I was going to ask you, Ian, and this kind of freaks people out sometimes, is content consolidation. Can you talk about what it is a little bit, and how can it improve SEO performance?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to try to bring it down to its simplest, because I think we are in this stuff every day, working on behalf of our clients, so that they never have to worry about this kind of stuff. But content consolidation is really about, how do you solve the problem more for Google than for your visitors. This is more about how search engines see you. But the problem of content cannibalization, where you've created so much content that you have multiple pages or posts that are competing to rank for the same keywords, key phrases, topics, right? So that's essentially what the problem is that consolidation is trying to solve for. That you need to, first of all, figure out, you know, what is the issue? Do I have an issue on my website that could potentially be hurting my rankings? Let me just rephrase that. So content consolidation is when you take those competing pieces of content, you bring them together, usually into one page or article, and you consolidate them to create one strong article or page to help you rank for that keyword that's in question or that key phrase. Why you do that, you really need to consolidate your content to help weak ranking pages or posts rank better. So I'll explain how you would know that in a minute, but you basically need to raise the perceived quality of your page in the eyes of Google. That's in essence what you're trying to achieve with content consolidation. So then that obviously raises the next question. Well, how on earth do you know which pages need to be consolidated? And that's not super easy for people, especially people that, businesses that don't have an expert in the field that are helping them. There are things you can look up, Google this, Google Quality Rater Guidelines. If you want some really exciting reading tonight, Google that, read through the article. You will fall asleep quickly. But really, if you were to drill down, because the reason I even bring that up is that's what's guiding all of this. Google has guidelines for the quality of content on websites. And so if I were to boil it down, there's a whole bunch of points in there, but probably the most important point is what is the purpose of the page? So, when you say you have 3 pages that are competing each other, and this is very, very common. Like, I don't want our listeners to think, oh, it's probably not happening on my website. I will tell you, if you have a website that's over 3 years old and you've continued to produce content on a regular basis, I bet you have competing pages and posts. It just happens. We don't mean it to happen as businesses, but especially if you've jumped from vendor to vendor to help you with your SEO or your content development, it's probably your website is probably rife with this. So, excuse me, the most important thing again is what's the purpose of the page? Why does it exist? What is its purpose? What's it trying to do? What's it trying to tell people? And there's tools out there. You can use tools like SEMrush, Ahrefs. These tools are great at helping you determine page quality. You can use, to some extent, Google's search. Why is it not coming to me?
Search Console.
Thank you. Search Console. You can use Google's Search Console, and that will give you some hints. Because often what you'll see if you're looking in there it will tell you, like, some pages have been indexed, some pages haven't been indexed. Oftentimes you'll see that if a page hasn't been indexed and yet it's been there for a long time and you've asked Google to index the page, Google's seeing an issue with it. So you need to take a look at it. So really the process, let me share the process that we would go through to consolidate pages or content. First of all, you can go to that Google Quality Rater Guidelines to inform yourself, or you can hire someone. But you need to first identify the pages that need consolidating. Talked a little bit about that. Then you need to determine which out of those pages are the strong page and the weaker pages, because you don't want to try to move the quality or the Google juice that you have on the good page and move it to a weaker page. You're just going to be undercutting your ranking. You essentially want to move the weaker pages over to the strong page and bolster that one, make it a better page or post. And it's not easy. You need to do this wisely. Oftentimes you can't just grab the content and throw it over, because then the page doesn't make sense, right? So you do need to have some writing chops to be able to, interweave the content appropriately from both a human standpoint and a Google standpoint. Because again, Google cares about the people that are reading pages. The more people spend time on the page, the more they engage on a page, the more people Google will send there, right? So you want to make it you can't just build pages for Google. It's for the two audiences, Google and the readers. But once you've rewritten it, usually what you want to do is get rid of the weaker pages. They serve no purpose. Or in some circumstances, you might want to rewrite the weaker pages and try to get them to rank for maybe a derivative keyword that supports the stronger keyword you're trying to rank on the main page. We've talked a lot in the past about EEAT, and that stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. That's a Google acronym that they've put out there that summarizes what Google's looking for as far as what content should be on a web page. So those are things to think about as you're, optimizing that one key page. But the bottom line is that the consolidation process is all about providing the most value you possibly can on a topic that your page is trying to rank for. That it's not super complex, and never lose sight that Google wants to send traffic to the very best authoritative pages on a topic. But you have to earn it. You have to earn Google traffic by creating the very best, most authoritative page on a topic, right? And especially if you're a local business, you have a much smaller world that you have to care about. You just have to outcompete your local competition to some degree, and that will help you win. But that's, there are other things we could talk about consolidation, but to me, that's kind of boiling it down as simply as I possibly can and trying to make it as uncomplex as I possibly can.
Yeah, and so when it comes to content consolidation, this kind of illustrates the point. And part of this whole topic is things that small businesses need to be aware of, but not necessarily try to do themselves, because when you start consolidating content, now you get into things, redirects, if you eliminate pages, redirects, and canonical URLs, where this is the original source of this content on my website. And that's something that small businesses, that they're not going to know anything about. And why should they? I mean, that's not their job. That's something that we do. And you can't just deleting web pages. And like you said, if you've been in business for a while, and we see this a lot, businesses change as well. And they may have content on their website relating to things that they really no longer do.
Right.
And so you want to get rid of that content, but you can't just delete web page. Well, you can, but you shouldn't just delete web pages that are indexed in Google without some kind of redirect.
Yeah, one of the big no-nos that I come across when we're doing like website audits, whether it's for a prospect or they've engaged us in a larger auditing process to understand how they're doing in their digital marketing, right? They want a third party to come in and give an audit. One of the biggest things I see is where whoever built the website or whoever has continued building out a website, I don't know, you don't always know the history of kind of who built it and then who's managed it, is that I've come across a myriad of websites, especially in small local businesses, where and we've talked about this on other episodes, but where they thought the tool like Yoast, like Rank Math, where you enter the keyword, well, heck, I'm a plumber, so I want to show up for plumber in my area every time somebody searches for it. So they make the focus of every single page or post plumber or plumbers, and you do an audit of that, and all you're doing is causing confusion to Google, because Google then has no idea what each page is trying to talk about, and you're creating competing priorities for Google, and it's never going to get you. You think you're gaming the system when in fact you're ruining your chance of ranking highly. But that one I see all the time, where they think they're entering the magic keyword into the tool, but the tool is just a feedback mechanism to help you actually appropriately optimize a page.
Keyword cannibalization.
That's right.
And and that's a good point. Like you said, we have talked about this in the past. When you're using these different tools, it's software, and software is only good as the programmers. But you have to understand how the software works and what it's doing. And I remember I had this conversation long time ago with another marketing agency that we used to work with. When you use one of these optimizer guidance tools, whatever you want to call it, we use Yoast, like you said, Yoast or Rank Math. You put a focus keyword in there, you're not telling Google anything. What you're doing, you're saying, I want this piece of content to rank for this particular key phrase. And it says, okay, then you should do this and this and this. You're not telling Google anything. And that's one of the misconceptions that I've seen is that, well, I put this key phrase in there, so I'm telling Google that this should rank for this. No, you're not. That's not how it works. You have to understand how these things work. It's like anything. You have to know how to interpret the data that's being given to you.
Yeah.
So my next question was for Jeff, and my question for him was, is there a psychological approach to content creation? And this is something a lot of times no one thinks about, and there's a process, and it takes time and money to create content, but there is a psychological approach to it, and here's what Jeff had to say about it.
The next question is there a psychological component to content creation? And I'll kick it off and say, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's part of understanding your ideal client. If you really understand your ideal client persona or personas, most businesses will have more than one, then you have to get into their head. You have to know how they think, how they view the world, where they get their information. And that all factors into content creation. I don't think you can do a good job of content creation without understanding the psychology of your target audience. The referenced article that we used for show prep on Search Engine Land talks about there being 4 psychological traits. There's a lot of different psychology theories, and this is all fascinating if you love that stuff. Myers-Briggs, DISC profile, Sally Hogshead's How to Fascinate. There's lots of different types of profiles and ways to understand how people view the world and how they might react to it. But the search engine article puts things in 4 quadrants. They talk about the psychological traits being active or reflective, and being task-focused or people-focused. And if your audience tends to be one of those, then you should gear your content towards that. And if your audience isn't one of those, if it's more broad-based, then you probably want to have a little something for everybody, or at least the ones that matter. Similarly, as you're developing content, is your audience visually oriented? Are they auditory oriented? Are they action oriented? And a lot of times the language people use when they talk to you will give you clues. Somebody says, that doesn't sound right. They're probably auditory. They like to listen to things. If they say, looks good, that's probably an indicator that they're visual. And if they say, feels like something's a little missing, right? Then you want to think you're in an experiential or a kinesthetic learning type of mode. So having content for the different types of people that you're likely to encounter in your target audience becomes very important, in gearing it toward them. I'm an engineer by deep background, so we talk about this thing about impedance matching, and the best transmission of information happens when there's the least resistance, if you will. It's called impedance matching. And that's what you want to do. You want to match your content and the style that you deliver it to the style that the people want to take it up in. When you do that, you'll be a lot more successful in getting your point across. So how about you guys? What do you think?
So
I mean,
anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's why recognizing, the power of story and using story as kind of that, the main way that you're communicating is resonating with people. But that's not enough. You have to make sure that you're really truly talking about the problems that your ideal customers are having to resonate. And so that's all psychology. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the elements of value pyramid. What is your what are you offering, and what is the expectation of your prospective customer, and do those align? I mean, that's all psychology.
Yeah, I would add in there too that what's so interesting, and years and years and years ago I studied graphic design. That's what I originally went to school for, graphic design and animation. And at the time I remember we took a psychology course, and it was so fascinating because it delved a lot into the psychology of advertising at the time. And I don't think anything's radically changed. Human behavior is very much the same, that we make decisions both logically and emotionally. But we know from studies that the emotion often is far more powerful than the logic. We still need the logic. Decisions still need to be supported by logic, but the actual pushing the button of acceptance, or taking the micro decisions of acceptance, saying yes, are more of an emotional decision that may be supported by logic. But you really, when you're thinking about, you do this naturally when you're meeting face to face with a prospective client or customer, right? You good customer service people, good salespeople, good business people are reading the person that's sitting across from them. They're listening, just like what Jeff said. They're listening to the words they use. They're trying to create a resonance between, here's what I have to offer and how it meets your specific need, like what you're talking about, Ken. And here's how it's going to transform your life. Sometimes it's not radical, but sometimes it is. And you're trying to hit them emotionally as well, so that they have the tools that equip them to make that decision as quickly as possible. Because you have to, again, just like what I was saying earlier about websites, the people are there to make a decision. That they may not be ready to make a decision. They still may be in the research phase, and that's okay. But they're spending their valuable time researching because they have a problem to solve. And so, yeah, I think psychology is absolutely huge. But I also think you have to be careful that you don't go so deep into the psychology that it pushes aside common sense. Because I've seen that before, like, avatars and personas when I was in the corporate world used to be this massive trend. And we used to create beautiful personas. We would spend a lot with outside agencies, focus groups, all sorts of things, doing these massive persona projects. And then in the end, a lot of times, like, if we just sat down with the sales team and if we just looked at, the information we had at our disposal, we could have created and crafted a very simple persona that helped us help our clients more, right? So I think the psychology part is so important, but don't go crazy with it. Like, don't spend all your time on that kind of stuff.
I do think, when we talk about problems, again, this is from StoryBrand. I love what they do here. There are three layers of problems. There's internal, external, and philosophical.
Yeah.
External is, maybe the way they express their problem. Internal is usually why they buy. And then philosophical is just, gosh, it shouldn't be that hard to do this, or it's right or wrong, or, so these are big archetypal kinds of things. But, the internal gets to the psychology of everything. So,
Yeah.
You've got to be able to speak to both the external and internal and philosophical problems.
Yeah.
All right. So my next question was for Approved, but he had a last minute emergency, couldn't be with us. So I'm just going to throw this out there, but my question for his one was content gap analysis. What is it, and why it should be a part of your SEO strategy? So I'll start by saying it's content gap analysis is looking at your competitors and the content they have. If you have competitors, you offer the same types of services, you're in the same industry, and what kind of content do they have that you don't have, and filling that content gap. So I'll just throw that out there, and Ken, start with you, and
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I always go back to a Whiteboard Friday that I saw Rand Fishkin do several years ago, content to keyword analysis, where you're looking at, how is your website ranking, for the important keywords that you have, and do you have content to help you have a chance to rank for that keyword? Each and every page on your website is potentially a portal into your website from a user search. And so the more content you have, if it's well done, the greater an opportunity it gives you to rank. And so you want to go through a process, and Ian talked about, from a consolidation perspective, you need to do it for that reason as well, but you also need to do it to plug the gaps. You're not ranking for asphalt roofs, and yet that's an important part of your business. If you're a roofing contractor, you probably need to spend some time and energy creating content to help your website rank for asphalt roofs in the market that you want to serve. So it's a process. I think that's kind of the thing that I would really take away from this is content to keyword analysis, and just checking that and see how that all is in alignment.
Yeah, and that's something anybody focused on SEO should be doing, right? We do that constantly with new clients when we're going to build a new website or we're taking over SEO. We do that all the time with existing clients that we're building out content for and trying to help rank in search engine. Because here's the thing, when you do gap analysis. So as an example, working with an accountant, they did not use the term accountant or accounting on their website when we took it over. And yet that's it sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud.
That
And it
could
was
be a problem.
But this is going back to that psychology we were talking about earlier, not the psychology of the customer you're trying to attract, the psychology of the business owner, where in their mind, they've elevated their business or are trying to portray an elevated service offering that, hey, we don't want to just be an accountant. We want to be a whatever, right? So they built up this thing. I've seen this too a few times, where they've created new terms, but nobody in their right mind, other than them and maybe some close friends and family, would have any idea what that term means, because it's not a real term. They made it up. And so I just wanted to share that part, because I think that's really important, just to remind people, this isn't about you, business owner. This is about the people you're trying to attract. But the only way we knew that there was an issue there is because we had set up a competitive set in a SEO tool we use with the client's website. We were able to look at all of the keywords we wanted them to rank for, because we knew what the top ranking keywords were for an accounting firm. And they weren't there. There was a big zero in there related to accounting terms. And so then that's a gap analysis. We could go, okay, is it that Google's not picking up that content and it exists? Or is there no content on their website and they need to create content related to that? And it was the latter in this case. But we've seen it many, many times. Again, sometimes you just need to understand also, maybe you are ranking for a keyword, but you're number 79 and your competition's number 1 and 2. Content gap analysis helps you understand, well, okay, let's dig into that. What content do they have related to that keyword or that topic that we don't have? And then you can it can guide the content that you're building. But without doing a gap analysis, you really don't know. You're just creating content for content's sake. You may even have strategic reasons to create that content, but SEO should be feeding, to some extent and a large extent, in my viewpoint, what content you're actually creating.
Yeah, and and that's a lot of times that gap analysis, whether it's content gap, keyword gap, that's a lot of times that's kind of where you start on an SEO strategy, because content is everything.
And it could be a quick win too, right? Like if you see some low hanging fruit, like what I was talking about, like heck, an accountant should be ranking for an accountant, right? So
Right.
that right there is like, okay, let's put some effort into that. Yeah.
And it's not just enough to say it once on your website as
Yeah.
a bullet point. I mean, again, another cardinal sin that we see a lot of small businesses make, heck, even bigger businesses, is they have a bullet point of all of the services that they offer, lumped together on a single services page, but there's no content really about any one of those bullet points to give the user or Google, as Ian's pointed out. You've got two audiences, anything to work with. So how, I mean, it's like, oh, great, they do this. Well, I wonder how they do it. What's the reputation around doing it? Yeah, I mean,
What's their process?
yeah, yeah.
Well, and this one thing that you said there made me chuckle, because I still come across this occasionally and I can't believe it, because this is, as I said, like I was building websites a long, long time ago. And at the time, because I was a graphic designer, because pretty websites were actually what we were building back in the day before SEO became, a rigorous form of attracting clients. You would take text, you would create an image, and you would put it on the website with those bullet points because you wanted it to look a certain way, you wanted it aligned a certain way, you wanted a certain color, and maybe your web building tool couldn't do that. I still come across that sometimes, where people have embedded copy or text,
Right.
bullet points, phrases within images, and they're wondering why they're not ranking. Well, it's because Google doesn't know what that is. Like you're not giving textual context at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can, through alt text, but it's not going to be as elaborate, And
Right.
so if you have 5 bullet points that describe the 5 core services that you do, and the only place you have that language on your website is embedded in an image, you've given Google nothing, and you've practically given the user nothing from an experience perspective, because it's like, okay, great, there's a bullet point there. Why should
And it
I
won't work on mobile. Like I
Right,
see it all the
right.
time. It doesn't work on mobile.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah, and these are a lot of the finer points. Text as part of an image is not text to a search engine bot. Okay.
Right.
And that's what, when we say Google or Bing or whatever, they crawl your website, these aren't real people looking at your website. Okay. These are algorithms. It's a crawl robot. That's what the Google bot, it's Google's crawl robot. And like I said, text that's part of an image, not an overlay, okay, not a text overlay on an image, but text that is part of an image, like you were saying, Ian, that's not text to these crawl bots. And when you said that, it made me think of something that I was talking to one of our VAs, that they were, when you talk about having images as part of a page or a post, they were trying not to confuse people, a content box, okay? And then instead of putting an image element, and this is getting into one of those finer points that most people aren't even going to think about, that instead of using an image element, which a crawl bot would recognize as an image, they were making the background of this content box an image, which the crawl bots don't recognize as an image. I know that it sounds stupid, okay, but the crawl bots don't see that as an image. They don't see it as anything. And this is going back to, this is why you hire a marketing agency that understands these things, because you as a small business, it's not your job to know these things. You have a business to run, okay? And that's why you hire a marketing agency that understands these finer points, and these little technical details, structured data, things like that. That all these things work together. And going back to something, what Ken was talking about the bullet points. Okay, those are called pillar pages, hub pages, whatever you want to call them. And you build those out. That's a whole other topic. We talked about that in the past. But this is why you really need to work with a marketing agency.
It sounds very self-serving when we say that, but man, like, we just want to help people. and we see it too often. And we become marketing therapists for people because they've been burned so often and they don't know it. And this kind of stuff, if you go cheap, usually you won't get a really great website built the proper way, because cheap, they don't have time to do it. And they might not have the experience or expertise to help them do this. But man, if we could help more businesses avoid this kind of stuff, I would love that. I mean, and that's partly why I think we do this podcast, is because we want business owners, especially small business owners, to be informed and to understand some of the technical aspects and the strategic elements they should be focusing on to avoid the pain of hiring the wrong people.
Yeah, definitely. And hey, look at we've actually kept this under an hour, I think, for like the first time.
Wow.
But I think this is, unless anyone has anything else to add, I think this is a good place to wrap up. Ian, you want to take us out?
Sure. Well, thank you for joining us today. As marketing guides, we love to help you guys. And if you have a particular topic that you're struggling with, please let us know. Drop us a line. Also, if you find value in this, please share it with other business owners. Help spread the word. Again, we're here to help. We want business owners to flourish. They are the engine of our economies. So until then, keep calm and market on, folks.